This place looks absolutely nuts. It's like a landscape Dr. Seuss would draw. What you're looking at is the Zangi Dangia landform, and yes, these striped hills are entirely natural, formed over 24 million years as layers of sandstone and minerals were pressed together, then pushed upward by tectonic movement. Wind and rain sculpted the sharp ridges and valleys, but the colors, the reds, oranges, yellows, and blues, all arranged in these beautiful stripes, it's amazing. At sunrise and sunset, the entire landscape seems to glow, just exaggerating the already surreal look. There's no blending or soft transitions here, it's all these bold layers of color. The shapes and shades register as familiar, yet completely wrong for a mountain range. It almost just looks too deliberate to be random. Also, I don't know about you, but it kind of looks tasty. I don't know, looks like an ice cream flavor or something. The Salvador Dali desert doesn't look like it belongs to Earth. Looks like it belongs in a dream. Found in southwestern Bolivia, this barren stretch sits at high altitude, scattered with wind-sculpted rocks that look unlike anything else on the planet. Salvador Dali never actually saw this place, but the comparison makes sense. The formations really do look like the distorted shapes from his paintings. A tree made of stone boulders that lean in impossible balances. The most well-known is the stone tree, a narrow trunk supported by a wide crown, like it was carved to be some sort of modern art piece, only of course it wasn't. The desert is silent, dry, mostly lifeless. There are no animals, no buildings, no sounds except the wind, and that just adds to the surreal atmosphere. This place looks unreal. It's called Pumucale. It looks like it's covered in snow, but it's not. What you're looking at is actually solid white stone. See, over thousands of years, hot springs rich in calcium have flowed down the hillside, leaving behind thick mineral deposits that formed into these terraces. The result is a kind of frozen waterfall with bright white steps in these small pools of pale blue water. It looks cold, but it's actually warm to the touch. That contrast is what makes it so strange to walk through. You're standing in what looks like an icy landscape, but there's no ice, and everything is shaped so neatly it almost feels like it must have been created intentionally. The pools are perfectly spaced, the steps look almost evenly cut, but it's all just water and time. It's no surprise that people have been coming here for thousands of years. The ancient city of Hierapolis was built right next to it, and people believed the waters had healing powers. And I can't blame them. Even with crowds around, the layout makes it feel calm and kind of untouched. It doesn't look like any other landscape in the region, or really on the entire planet. Just off the coast of Zakynthos, Greece, there's something strange sitting on the sea floor. It looks like the remains of a sunken city. There are stone pavements, round columns, big flat slabs arranged in what look like neat rows. Divers first thought they discovered some forgotten ancient port or town, but it turns out it's not actually the case. These shapes were formed by natural gas seeps in the ocean floor. Over time, the minerals hardened into these perfectly round and flat structures that just happened to look like parts of a building. Even with that explanation though, it's hard not to question what you're seeing. The geometry feels too deliberate. The slabs connect at right angles. Some of the circular shapes look exactly like carved bases for columns. There are no walls or statues or tools, but your brain still wants it to be ruins. The water here is so clear and shallow too that you can see the whole formation from up above, which only adds to the effect. Salar de Uyuni is the largest salt flat in the world. People say when you're standing in the middle of it, it barely feels real. Looks to me like one of those Windows desktop backgrounds you'd have in the mid-2000s, and I don't mean that in a bad way. Just this place just looks breathtaking. Like I just hear ambient Brian Eno music when I look at images here. For most of the year, it's this massive stretch of solid, dry salt, totally flat, pure white, almost nothing breaking up the horizon. It looks like the surface of another planet. But when it rains, the whole thing changes. You get this thin layer of water that settles on top, turning the salt flat into this near perfect mirror. Suddenly the sky is reflected on the ground, and there's no clear line between up and down. You can walk across it and see your own reflection moving below you. Along with the clouds, sun, and whatever else is overhead, it honestly looks like heaven on earth. And that mirror effect is so precise that satellite agencies sometimes use it to calibrate their instruments. But for anyone visiting with no visible landmarks, it's hard to judge distance. Some will say it almost feels like you're floating between two skies, and the flatness makes it almost impossible to tell how far you've walked. There's nothing quite like this place. Sacatra is one of the strangest places on Earth. Not because of any one thing, it's because almost everything about this place feels off. If you ever wanted to visit Pandora from Avatar, this is probably as close as you're gonna get, on Earth, at least. The island is part of Yemen, but it broke off from mainland Africa millions of years ago. And in that time, it's developed a completely unique ecosystem. And people say unique a lot to describe things. That really does fit here. About a third of the plant life can't be found anywhere else on the planet. The most famous example is the dragon's tree, which looks like a giant umbrella and bleeds red sap when it's cut. Now that's just the start. There are bottle-shaped trees, bizarre shrubs, weird-looking reptiles and birds that evolved in total isolation. Even the coastline looks kinda strange, with pale beaches leading into rocky cliffs and caves carved into limestone. You walk around and get the sense that someone shuffled together a desert, a jungle, and like a sci-fi set. At least that's how it's described, and that's what I can see looking at it. I've never been. I would absolutely love to go, though. It feels like it belongs to a different version of Earth entirely. And local legends talk about how ancient sailors would arrive here and then think they'd found the edge of the known world, and it's easy to see why. Lake Hillier is bright pink. It's not kind of pink. The place is unapologetically Barbie pink. It sits on an island off the coast of Western Australia, surrounded by dark green forest and blue ocean on the other side, and the contrast is just ridiculous. There's no slow transition here. It's just this sharp line between pink and then you got everything else. And the water stays pink even when you scoop it into a bottle. Scientists think that it's caused by a microbe that releases a pigment under certain conditions, but no one's completely figured this out. The lake's only about 600 meters across, no rivers feeding into it, and nothing around it that looks even remotely similar. It's completely harmless too, you can swim in it. You can't swim in this next place though. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is one of the most extreme environments on Earth. It's brutally hot, with temperatures regularly hitting over 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or roughly 50 degrees Celsius. The landscape here looks almost like a planet that's still forming. You'll see sulfur springs that glow this neon yellow and green. Bubbling and steaming acidic pools are everywhere, and salt flats are cracked into these sharp, jagged patterns. As you can probably imagine, the air smells like sulfur and salt, and there's almost no plant or animal life except for tiny organisms. Some scientists actually come here to study how early Earth might have looked. Others use it as a stand-in for what alien life might deal with, on other planets. Because nothing about this place looks stable. The ground is always hissing and smoking, and it feels like it could change shape overnight. I kind of imagine it smells like farts, but you'd have to tell me if you've ever been. Flag Geyser in Nevada wasn't supposed to exist. In the 1960s, a geothermal company drilled into the ground looking for energy, and then they accidentally tapped into a pressurized spring. They capped it, but the seal didn't hold. Hot, mineral-rich water started pouring out, and it just never stopped. Over time, those minerals built up into this mound, and algae took over, turning the geyser into this multicolored thing that you're looking at now. Multiple sprouts constantly spraying out hot water. I mean, this thing is indescribable. First of all, look at the colors, the reds, greens, and yellows. It's shaped like something you'd see in a coral reef. It's not huge, maybe about 12 feet tall, but it sticks out like crazy in the middle of this dry, flat desert. Looks like it was grown in a lab. And something went wrong. Unfortunately, it's on private land, and it's not generally open to the public, so most people only see it in photos, but it's very real, and it's still changing. So if hippie tie-dye somehow became a place, it would have to be the Grand Prismatic Spring in Yellowstone. This is the largest hot spring in the United States, and easily one of the most colorful. From above, it looks like this giant, trippy eye. Deep blue in the center, then rings of green, yellow, orange, and red moving outward. Each band is filled with different types of microbes, each one thriving in a specific temperature. The center is near boiling, crystal clear, but as the water cools near the edges, different microbes take over and change the color. The air is full of steam here, and that constant haze makes the whole thing almost look like it's glowing or breathing. You can't get too close, there's a boardwalk that keeps you at a safe distance, but even from there, it just doesn't look like it should be real. You're staring at a pool that's basically a living chemical reaction, all laid out in these perfect rings. Looks pretty incredible. This has become a rather infamous story on Reddit. Always reminds me of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Inner Light. So this guy takes a hit to the head and blacks out. But instead of being out for a few seconds, the guy ends up living what feels like 10 full years in a completely different life. Entirely in his head, of course. In this other version of reality, he meets a woman, falls in love, settles down, starts a family. They go grocery shopping, they argue about bills, they play with their kids in the yard. He remembers what the weather was like. He remembers birthdays. I mean, we're talking real grounded stuff here. This doesn't sound like the type of wacky nonsense that goes on in dreams. Felt like real life. 10 years of it, mind you. But one day in that world, he starts noticing something strange. There's this lamp in the living room, totally normal looking, but it doesn't fit. It starts bugging him. It's like a little glitch. And the more he stares at it, the more everything else starts to feel wrong. And that's when it all starts unraveling. Suddenly he wakes up. He's lying on the ground, surrounded by people. He's back where he was right before he blacked out. Only minutes have passed. But the man is absolutely devastated. The life he just came back to doesn't feel right anymore. He remembers his wife and kids from the other world. He misses them. They weren't real though, but the emotions were. For a long time after, he struggled. He said it felt like he was mourning people who never existed. Now, was this a case of the brain doing weird things under stress? Or did he tap into something else, a different version of his life that's playing out somewhere, a parallel universe? Ken Korczak, a writer and journalist, had one of the most bizarre experiences, writing an article claiming that he'd slipped into a parallel universe. It wasn't like a whole new world, just a slightly different version of his own home and garden. He said the differences were subtle at first. His pets, specifically his cats and chickens, were behaving completely differently than he was used to. It's like they were the same animals, but something was just off about them, like seeing them through a different lens. In his words, it felt like everything in his yard was a few degrees askew. But the weirdest part came when he met this strange female entity. She wasn't human, at least not in the way you'd think. Korczak described her as resembling an elf or a fairy, and she seemed completely at home in this alternate reality. He also described feeling like she was there for a reason, like she was some kind of guide in this parallel world. He spent a lot of time reflecting on it, especially the strange, almost magical feeling of meeting this being. He genuinely believes that he had a real encounter with a parallel version of his home. As someone who's always been interested in the concept of alternate realities too, he dove deep trying to make sense of it. Was this just a hallucination, or did he actually slip into another dimension for a brief moment? In December of 2024, Google made a pretty big announcement about their new quantum chip, Willow. This chip solved a problem in 5 minutes that would have taken even the fastest supercomputers 47 years. What was amazing here though wasn't just how fast the chip was, it's also what the head of Google's quantum AI team, Hartmut Nevins, said about it. He mentioned that this speed might be a sign that their quantum computers are pulling from multiple realities at once. Not just a throwaway comment, he was serious about this. Now, this ties in with something called the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which states that every decision or event causes the universe to split into different versions, creating a parallel reality for each possibility. So when a quantum computer like Willow does a calculation, it's possible that it's tapping into these other universes, running all the possibilities at once, without us even realizing it. And it's not just Google talking along these lines. Other tech companies like IBM and D-Wave have been exploring quantum computing for years, and some think this technology could eventually lead us to understand or even interact with alternate realities. It's not quite science fiction anymore. Quantum computing might be the closest thing we've got to real-world proof that the multiverse could exist. So it's a sweltering day in July of 1954 at Tokyo's Haneda Airport. A man arrives on an international flight and walks up to customs. Everything seems routine. He looks European, speaks multiple languages, and has a legit-looking passport, from a distance that is. Looking at it up close, turns out this passport says he's from a country called Torrid. Never heard of it? Neither had the Japanese officials. They ask him to point it out on a map, and without hesitation he points to the area around where Andorra is, between France and Spain, but he's confused. He insists Torrid has been a country for over 1,000 years. The customs officers are confused, to say the least. Is this a joke? Is the guy just out of his mind? The guy seems just as confused as they are. His passport has stamps from other countries, including past visits to Japan, and he has multiple currencies in his wallet. He even mentions a business trip and says he's got meetings set up with a company in Tokyo, but when the officials call the company, they say they've never heard of him. Same story with the hotel that he claimed to have booked. At this point, they're really not sure what to do with him, so they put him up in a hotel room under guard for the night while they try to figure things out. But by the next morning, he's gone. The room was locked from the outside. There was no way out, at least none that the guards wouldn't have been able to see. To this day, no one knows who he was or where he came from, really. Some think he slipped into our world from another reality and then slipped right back out. Others think this whole story is just a good old-fashioned urban legend, but if we seriously consider the possibility that the multiverse really is a thing, well then this story starts to sound a little less outlandish. The Maravasi Stone Forest in Peru is one of those places that seems to have a ton of weird stuff happening. People have been talking about strange occurrences there for years, mostly because the place is filled with these huge stone structures that look like they belong to some ancient civilization. But there are also some strange stories surrounding this place. Well, one goes that a group of hikers got a lot more than they bargained for when they camped here. While hanging out, they started to hear some music coming from what seemed like a cabin in the middle of nowhere. It sounded like a celebration. The group looked around and sure enough, they spotted a stone cabin lit up from the inside, and they could see people dancing through the windows. The people were dressed like they were from the 1600s, all in old-fashioned clothes. Naturally, one of the hikers decided to check things out. She got closer to the cabin, and the closer she got, the stranger things became. Her friend noticed that she was acting off, like her body was stiff and she wasn't walking right. Got even weirder when she suddenly couldn't move her arm, like she was partially paralyzed. They managed to pull her away from the cabin, and she snapped out of it right away. People who know the area say the Maravasi might be some kind of doorway between dimensions or timelines. The idea is that certain spots on Earth might have thin barriers to other worlds, and that cabin could have been a glimpse into some different time. This story comes from a Reddit user named Albert Norman 2069, who shared an experience that left him questioning everything about the world. It had all started on June 28, 2014, a day that seemed normal at first. He'd woken up, brushed his teeth, ate breakfast, and headed out to work. But as he turned on the car radio, something wasn't right. Instead of the usual music, the station was airing a talk show. The host was excitedly talking about something called Victory in the Great War, and praising the troops for their role in this victory. At first, the Redditor thought maybe it was some kind of special segment, but the more the host went on, the stranger things got. There was talk of a victory in Italy, and something about the Second Great Depression finally coming to an end. He was confused, but he ended up brushing things off. It was probably just fictional. But then things started getting even stranger when he was at work. During lunch, he overheard his coworkers talking about the same victory in Italy, and they kept mentioning the numbers 33 to 13. When he asked what they were talking about, they acted like he was the odd one for not knowing. And when he asked about a coworker named Sam, who didn't seem to be there, no one seemed to remember it. At least something was very off. On his way home, he decided to take a different route to avoid traffic, and that's when he noticed that the city looked worse than he remembered. Buildings were crumbling, some were abandoned, and there were banners everywhere again celebrating this mysterious victory. When he finally got home, he flicked on the news. The anchors were talking about the victory in Italy and how the US was dealing with a war abroad. Europe was also in chaos, and the US was in an even worse depression than the 1930s. Of course, things went back to normal by the next day. So was it just a really vivid dream? Well, possibly. But perhaps Albert Norman 2069 really did spend a day in a much darker version of our own reality. Next up are some pretty strange cave paintings, the Wanjinas, some of the most mysterious and downright eerie cave art on
Earth. These ancient paintings are found in the Kimberley region of northwestern Australia, painted by Aboriginal tribes whose culture has been going strong for over 60,000 years. The Wanjinas, according to legend, were sky beings, spirits from the clouds who came down during dream time, said to be this time when the Earth was still being formed. These beings supposedly created the land, animals, people, everything. They taught the Aboriginals how to live, and then they vanished. Some say they returned to the stars, others say they went underground. But, I mean, just look at these cave paintings, the big black eyes, the pale skin, they look like aliens. But this art is estimated to be tens of thousands of years old, long before anyone was talking about aliens, at least not in the modern sense. Kinda makes you wonder, are the Wanjinas more than just myth? Did these ancient tribes actually encounter something from beyond the stars? Or maybe even from a parallel reality? This final story comes from Reddit user GoodResolve33 and goes as follows. When I was younger, my cousins and I would play in my aunt's basement during major holiday parties. Parents would be upstairs and we would all just hang out and mess around in the basement, entertaining ourselves with whatever junk was down there. Well, there was a metal door down there with a bolt lock that we never touched. But one day, we unlocked the door and we saw a major boxing event going on. I'm talking Jumbotron, bright lights, arena, and a major crowd. Everything seemed to freeze when we opened the door though. People in the crowd turned around to look at us. Fighters stopped fighting, the referee signaled us out, and we saw shadows in the crowd running toward us. It all sounds crazy, but I remember how scared we were. We shut the door, ran upstairs, and sat in the living room with our parents. I remember them being like, "What's going on with these guys?" As we sat in the living room silent, crapping ourselves because we thought we were going to get in trouble. Fast forward to much later, I tried to tell my parents, and they swear that I imagined it. I thought I did too for the longest time, until randomly, one of my cousins from that day hit me up after so long of not communicating, only to bring up that same event, detail for detail as I described and remembered it. I go back to that house to check out the door. Across the door is the neighbor's basement door, since it was a duplex, and stairs leading up the metal basement doors that come out to the backyard. Not sure what the F that was, and I promise you I'm not that crazy. I get goosebumps thinking about the situation sometimes because it makes absolutely zero sense. I used to watch this video all the time growing up. It's one of my favorites. So in this classic piece of police dashcam footage, Officer Wayne Daniels is caught in a chase with this white car. The vehicle is weaving through traffic, making all these freaky, sporadic maneuvers, almost like the car itself is possessed. But aside from that, it's a pretty standard car chase until the vehicle makes a hard left and drives straight through a fence. Yes, through it. All Officer Wayne Daniels can do now is just watch as the vehicle he was pursuing fades into the distance, beyond the intact fence right in front of him. Spooky stuff. Next is another strange car video. This one comes out of Russia. So this vehicle goes to make a left-hand turn, and as it moves into the intersection, suddenly this random car just appears, cutting them off, nearly causing a collision. Now, on one hand, you have all the strange theories. Is it a ghost car? Did the vehicle just suddenly spawn out of a parallel reality? On the other hand, this driver could have just roared into the intersection so fast they weren't on camera until they just seemed to show up, and that is just reckless driving. And honestly, I think that freaks me out way more than some mysterious phantom car appearing out of nowhere. Well, if there's anything that looks like it materialized out of a parallel reality, it's this thing. This has become a pretty famous photograph in the UFO/UAP community. It's called the Calvin photo. It was actually hidden for decades. Some people say it's one of the clearest UFO images ever taken. The story goes that back in 1990, two hotel chefs were out on a casual hike in the Scottish Highlands near a place called Calvin. They were just out for some fresh air, nice view, and then boom, they spot this massive diamond-shaped object just hovering in the sky. That's when they managed to snap their picture. A real sharp picture as well. They send it to a newspaper, but instead of publishing it, the paper passes it straight to the Ministry of Defense, and then the photo just disappears for over 30 years. Well, in 2022, a journalist named David Clark finally drags it out of hiding. Turns out a former Royal Air Force press officer had a copy stashed away this whole time. Clark gets a photo expert to analyze it, and guess what?
There's no signs of tampering to the image. It is legit. So, what is this thing? Well, Clark thinks it's a real UFO. Not necessarily alien maybe, but definitely something unidentified. What you're looking at here is footage of what's been referred to as the Hazdellan lights in Norway. These things have been showing up since the 1930s, and no one's been able to fully explain what they are. It's these weird glowing orbs or flashes of light. They're seen floating or zooming around a valley. Sometimes they hover in one spot, other times they move around, fast or slow. They've been seen at night, in the daytime, and they've stuck around anywhere from a few minutes to several hours. Scientists have actually tried to study them too. There's been legit research, long-term observation. People have tried to explain it with stuff like ionizing gas clouds, rare atmospheric conditions, or reflections from aircraft lights, you know, all the standard science guesses, but none of them have ever definitively solve the mystery. Just what exactly is going on here? Well, it's called ball lightning. It's a rare, unexplained phenomenon, a glowing orb of electricity that floats around during a thunderstorm. Sometimes ball lightning will stick around for several seconds, even up to a minute. People have described it as anything from the size of a golf ball to a basketball, sometimes bright white, other times glowing blue or orange. It's weird, it's unpredictable, and it doesn't follow any of the normal rules. The craziest part is scientists still don't really know how it works. There are a bunch of theories floating around. Maybe it's plasma, maybe it's some kind of gas reacting with electrical charges, maybe it's something else entirely. No one's ever been able to make it happen in a lab. It just shows up randomly and then it's gone. That's probably why there are stories of ball lightning flying through closed windows or even damaging people's homes. It's like it just phases in from somewhere else and then disappears again like nothing ever happened. So yeah, could it be some rare natural thing we just don't get yet? Yeah, sure. Or maybe it's not just electricity at all. Maybe it's something slipping in from another dimension for a few seconds before vanishing back to wherever it came from. Did this TikToker briefly switch realities or experience a glitch in the Matrix? Jade Gonzalez, or as she goes by on TikTok, KDaddy777_2, she shared some security footage taken at the restaurant she works at. She'd been cutting lemons when something very strange happened. Take a look. So she slices through this lemon twice, once in half, and then she cuts through one of the halves. She goes to put the cut half in a bag, and then she's like, what? She inspects it for a little bit, only to realize it's not cut anymore, so she ends up having to recut it. Now, is it possible she just didn't slice all the way through the lemon? Yeah, but it didn't appear to be cut at all, at least according to her. Now, it looks to me like she sliced through that sucker. I mean, I see the separation, but then somehow it supposedly forms back together. Interestingly, some commenters mention a yellowish flash appearing around the lemon. One guy said, okay, with the brightness all the way up in my face an inch from my screen, I see two clear halves and a yellow-white flash, and it's suddenly whole again. I don't know, guys, we may have an interdimensional glitch lemon on our hands. This is Brady Feigl, and this is a guy named Brady Feigl. No, I did not just show two pictures of the same guy. Are they twins? Well, not technically. Are they brothers? Nope. Are they related at all? No. They're just two very similar looking men who happen to be named Brady Feigl, played minor league baseball around the same time, have an identical height of 6'4", and they each share exactly 53% Germanic ancestry. I mean, you know, just some minor coincidences. You know what I'm gonna say now? The fact that these two exist so closely to each other as well, it just feels like a glitch. I mean, if we really are living in a simulation, then this is a very clear case of someone running things who just got lazy and just copied and pasted these two guys with some very slight tweaks. And before, you know, any know-it-alls in the comments are like, they don't look like twins, just stop. Stop, all right? They do, unequivocally. Identical twins? Maybe not. There are some clear differences in their faces, but they do look like they could be fraternal twins. Just admit it. So it's late at night and a trucker in Mexico is hauling cargo to Monterrey. Nothing weird, it's just another long drive until the company supervisor checks the truck's remote camera and sees something that makes his skin crawl. Sitting in the passenger seat is what looks like a woman. pale, wearing old-fashioned clothes. Now, at first the supervisor just thinks the driver picked up a hitchhiker or something, which is totally against company policy. So he messages the driver, like, "What's with the passenger?" The driver is confused, and he just kind of thinks his boss is messing with him, so he keeps driving. But when he finally arrives at his destination, the supervisor shows him the dashcam footage. The driver freaks out, swearing up and down that he was alone the whole time. But clearly someone was caught on video sitting there next to him the entire trip. Now, it'd be one thing if it was a woman in modern clothes sitting there chatting with the driver, but this wasn't really the case here. Something just seems off about this woman. A ghost? A weird glitch in the Matrix? Either way, you ask the driver and he'd probably tell you it was the creepiest thing he'd ever experienced on the road. What would you do if you were strolling through the park and came across this? 4 black cats, each one chilling on a separate bench. Not just randomly sprawled out either. I mean, 3 of them are sitting right on the edge of their benches, like they're part of some feline cult meeting, waiting for the 4th member to arrive. As for that last cat, well, it's still in motion, just hasn't figured out its assigned seating yet. This image was posted to Reddit titled Control-C, Control-V, so copy-paste, and yeah, it really does look like someone copy and pasted the same cat over and over. Now, black cats already get a bad rap thanks to superstitions, and seeing 4 of them lined up like some shadowy council of judgment doesn't exactly scream good vibes. I'm not even superstitious myself, but I don't even think I'd risk sitting on one of those benches. Alright, let's finish off the list with some sciencey talk. So the universe is expanding faster than it should be, and scientists can't quite figure out why. That weird mystery is called the Hubble tension. Basically, we're getting different answers depending on how we measure the speed of the universe's expansion, and it's throwing everything off. To explain it, some researchers from the University of New Mexico and UC Davis have floated a theory that there could be a mirror world. Yes, a full-blown parallel universe made up of what are called shadow particles. Exact copies of the ones in our universe, but invisible, and only detectable through gravity. They're saying this hidden realm could be messing with how we perceive expansion, and might even be the source of dark matter, which is believed to make up most of the universe, but it isn't actually observable. This mirror world idea isn't totally new, but until recently it wasn't linked to solving the Hubble problem. Now scientists think it might be the missing piece that makes the math work. No one's saying that we've, confirmed the existence of parallel universes just yet, but if this turns out to be true, it could completely flip how we see the cosmos. What you're looking at here is obviously police inspecting a crashed car, but this was no normal car. This is known as the Siri ghost car case. On December 11th of 2002, multiple calls came into the police about a car swerving off the road and crashing into a ditch near an exit ramp in Surrey, England. Police show up, expecting to find a fresh crash and maybe help a driver in trouble, but they find something stranger. At first, the officers don't see anything unusual, it's just another crash site, but as they get closer, they spot this old, overgrown vehicle. And they do find the driver, but he's no longer alive, and hadn't been for a long time. And I don't mean hours, I mean months. It was the body of a man named Christopher Brian Chandler. He'd been missing for months. Based on the state of the car and the body, the police quickly determined the crash had happened 5 months earlier, back in July of the same year. Christopher's family confirmed that he had been missing since then. So the question was, what were people actually seeing on that cold December night when they phoned the police? There were no other accidents to be found. Some people believe they were seeing a sort of ghost car, a glimpse into another reality. Could it have been a time slip where the crash from the past somehow overlapped with the present moment? Some people think the reports of a crash were from a parallel universe or timeline, and the car appeared in real time for just a brief moment before disappearing. No one really knows for sure, and we'll probably never get the full answer, but it's a perfect example of how strange the world can be, and that maybe there's more going on than we can ever hope to understand. Now, what you're looking at here is known as a cold spot, deep out in space. Back in 2004, astronomers detected an anomaly in the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang. This cold spot is noticeably cooler than its surroundings, spanning approximately 1.8 billion light years. At first, scientists attributed this to a vast, empty supervoid, a massive region with fewer galaxies, but studying it further using more precise measurements, there's some doubt about that explanation, suggesting the void might not be as large or as empty as they thought. Well, so what does this mean though? Well, the discrepancy has led some researchers to wonder if the so-called cold spot could be the result of our universe colliding with another universe during the early stages of cosmic inflation. A collision like that could have left an imprint in the CMB, giving us possible evidence for the existence of parallel universes. This is the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or Anita for short. It's a NASA-funded experiment designed to detect high-energy cosmic neutrinos by capturing radio waves emitted when these particles interact with the Antarctic ice sheet. During its flights, Anita spotted several events where particles appeared to be traveling upward through the Earth instead of coming down from up in space. Scientists were very confused because that's not supposed to happen. Particles like neutrinos had never been seen passing through the Earth like that. Well, one hypothesis is that these anomalies could be explained by the existence of a parallel universe where the laws of physics, including the direction of time, are reversed. In this scenario, particles originating from a mirror universe could travel upward through our planet. In 2019, scientists dropped what looked like a blurry orange donut onto the internet and basically broke science Twitter for a week. What people were seeing was the first real photographic evidence of a black hole, snapped by the Event Horizon telescope. Now, what we're looking at isn't the black hole itself technically, because physics just won't let us actually see the thing. What it is the glowing gas and light bending around the edges of the black hole. That ring is the Event Horizon, a one-way ticket to nowhere, or maybe somewhere else. See, theoretical physicists like Nikodem Pawlowski think that black holes might not just absorb stuff into nothingness, but may instead be gateways to other universes. His theory says when matter collapses into a black hole, it might not get crushed out of existence, but instead get funneled into an entirely new universe on the other side. Like, imagine every black hole being the Big Bang for a different reality. It's all based on some deep theoretical physics. No one can prove it yet, but it does fit in with the idea about multiverses and bouncing universes instead of just one big beginning. So yeah, maybe this blurry space donut isn't just a hole, maybe it's a door. What you're looking at here is a piece of what's called Curian Photography. Back in the late 1930s, a guy named Simon Curian figured out that if you zap something with a high voltage current and take a picture of it, you get these weird glowing outlines around the object. Plants, apples, people's fingers, suddenly they all looked like they had some kind of electric aura around them. It was like photographing a life energy, or maybe something from some other reality bleeding into ours. Now, people still argue about what this actually shows. Some say it's just moisture or static or whatever. Cool, noted. But we're here to talk about the weird and unexplained. So others think this glow is something deeper, a glimpse into another layer of existence, something we can't see with our eyes, but might be there all the time, kind of like the Force. Some even claim these energy fields shift with your mood or health, and if you believe the more far-out theories, you're literally watching energy from another dimension react in real time. No one's ever managed to fully explain it, but the fact that a basic electrical rig might be snapping pics of alternate layers of reality, that's the kind of stuff that does keep you up at 3 a.m. scrolling deeper and deeper into the weirder parts of the internet. Back in 2007, a security camera at the courthouse in Santa Fe caught something weird early in the morning around 7 a.m. On the footage, there's this glowing white thing, kind of round, kind of shapeless too, just drifting across the frame. It wasn't fast or anything, just sort of floating there. People online immediately started calling it a ghost. Obviously, I mean, what else are people gonna say? Well, Some said it looked more like something out of phase with reality, like we were seeing a bleed through from somewhere else entirely. The way it moves doesn't look like a reflection or a glitch. It looks like it's there, just not in the way anything else usually is. Of course, the official explanation was that it was a bug walking across the lens, and sure, it could be that, but what do you think? Does it really look like a bug? People in different parts of the world have filmed what looks like two suns in the sky at the same time. One bright sun and then a second one that looks slightly smaller but still glowing like a legit celestial body. Naturally, a lot of people are pretty confused about this. Some folks say it's just a lens flare. Others say that nope, that was actually in the sky. So scientists have looked into it, like Jim Kaler, an astronomer from the University of Illinois, who says it's probably some kind of atmospheric optical illusion, light bending in weird ways because of moisture or temperature layers in the air, but even he is not 100% sure what the hell's going on. Mirages usually stack vertically, like one image above the other. This double sun thing is side by side, which makes a little less sense, so no one knows exactly what causes it. Grant Perry, another scientist, flat out said this is not a common optical phenomenon. So yeah, maybe it's just a weird trick of the light, or maybe we're seeing something that we can't even begin to comprehend. So this one is pretty wild. There's a CCTV clip that's become pretty well known for how downright bizarre it is. A guy is walking down the street at night. A second man enters the frame in front of him, at which point the first guy does something super weird. The guy in the back taps the dude in the front on the shoulder right as a car whizzes by and a metal object swings out as the guy in front is about to get swatted with it. If it weren't for the tap, he would have been hit, no question. The guy who does the tapping seems completely unfazed though. He's not panicking, he doesn't even look back to check if the car's about to hit him. How did he know what was about to happen? It's also strange because he doesn't even say anything. Doesn't stick around to be like, oh damn, wasn't that nuts? Almost like he knew exactly what was going to happen and was just doing his part to stop it. And then he's out. Naturally, the internet lost its mind with theories. The most popular one, the guy giving the warning is a time traveler. Maybe he's from the future, maybe a version of the guy in front of him from a different reality, trying to make sure his past self doesn't die in a freak accident. Could this be a huge coincidence? Maybe, but maybe not. So this is some straight up NPC behavior, except in real life. So a guy in Omsk, Russia wakes up one morning and can't find his flock of sheep. Usually he expects to find them right where he left them, but not today. He goes out looking for them and to his surprise finds the entire flock of sheep standing on top of a roof. Now there's no obvious way for these sheep to get up there, no secret sheep elevator that we know of anyway. The man assumed they'd somehow gotten spooked by something and just climbed up the roof. How the hell do a bunch of sheep get up there without making a noise or causing a ruckus? It's like they just teleported to the top, like an NPC glitch in a video game randomly appearing on a roof. Next we have space orcs. Orcs standing for odd radio circles. So what are these? Well, they're actually what the name suggests, massive circular blobs in space that show up in radio telescope images. And no one really knows what they are. They were first discovered in 2020 when astronomers were mapping the sky using Australia's ASCAP radio telescope. These huge rings appeared out of nowhere, perfectly circular, massive in size, and didn't match anything scientists had seen before. They aren't galaxies, stars, supernova remnants, or anything that usually pops up in space surveys. Some scientists think they might be the result of huge explosions or collisions far, far away, cosmic shockwaves that left behind radio footprints we're just now seeing. But others think they could have something to do with galaxies which have active black holes at their centers. And then there's the more exciting possibility that orcs might be a sign of something completely new, some sort of phenomenon we just don't have a name for yet. Point is, for as much as we think we know, the world is a highly mysterious place. In 1851, a man calling himself Yoparvorin was picked up by local authorities in the town of Frankfurt Oder, in what was then Prussia. He didn't speak German fluently, but he understood it well enough to communicate, and what he told them left everyone confused.
He claimed to be from a country called Luxaria, which he said was in a region called Sacatra, supposedly somewhere in the Eastern Hemisphere. Never heard of it? Well, yeah, nobody else did either. It wasn't on any map, it wasn't part of any empire, and it never has been. It didn't exist. But Yopar was dead serious. He said he was searching for his long-lost brother, and when asked to show his documents, he produced papers written in a completely unknown language. He also claimed to be fluent in multiple languages, some of which had no record of ever existing either, like Luxarian and Abramian. Eventually, authorities labeled him a lunatic and sent him off for further investigation, and that's the last the world ever heard of him. There was never any follow-up. If this guy ever really did exist, he probably ended up in an asylum, and if you know anything about mental institutions at the time, you know they were basically hell on earth. Makes sense he was never heard from again. Was this guy mentally unstable though, or is there really a chance that he somehow slipped from an alternate reality, a different version of Earth where Luxaria was as real as Germany? And in this alternate Earth, is there a more handsome version of me doing a video just like this, but talking about how Yoparvorin mysteriously vanished into thin air and was never seen again? In the heart of Liverpool, there's a street called Bold Street. Nothing crazy at first glance, just shops, cafes, people going about their day, but ask around and you'll likely hear whispers about something very strange. People slipping through time. One of the most famous stories comes from 1996. A guy named Frank was walking with his wife near Bold Street. She popped into a bookstore and he strolled ahead to a music shop. As he crossed the street, everything suddenly changed. The modern cars vanished, the noises around him dulled, and when he looked around, he was standing in what looked like 1950s Liverpool. People were dressed in post-war clothes, and there were old-school shop fronts where modern businesses should have been. He even saw a store called Crips, which hadn't existed in decades. A few moments later, the world flickered again, and he was back in the present like nothing had happened. Frank swore that this happened though, and he's not the only one. There are dozens of reports from people who say they've walked Bold Street and wound up in the past. Some just for a few seconds, others for minutes. Is it just a coincidence, hallucinations, or is Bold Street sitting on some kind of weird wrinkle in time, a natural glitch in the matrix, if you will? In 1979, two British couples, Geoff and Pauline Simpson and Len and Cynthia Gisby, were driving through France on their way to a holiday in Spain. While passing through Paris, they decided to stop for the night. They pulled off the main road and found this charming, old-fashioned hotel. Nothing fancy, but it was cozy and heavy wooden furniture. No modern conveniences though, like none. The beds didn't have pillows even, it was just bolsters. The windows had these old wooden shutters, odd but charming in a vintage kind of way. They even had dinner at the attached restaurant, where they were served a very basic, kind of old school meal by staff in these outdated uniforms. The whole night also only cost them about 19 francs total. That's about $21.50 US. Even in the 70s, that was suspiciously cheap. They tried to find the hotel again on their way back through Paris, but it was gone completely. They retraced their route. They asked locals. Nobody had ever heard of this place though. The road they remembered taking didn't seem to exist anymore. They later checked their photos from the trip, but the ones they took of the hotel were gone. They just weren't there. But both couples swore up and down that this was real. So did they spend the night in a building that slipped forward through time, or did they slip backward into some echo of a Paris that no longer was there? In 2009, a guy named James Richards claimed he had a very weird experience in California. According to him, he was out driving near Del Porto Canyon with his dog when it took off chasing a rabbit. He ran after it, tripped, hit his head, and blacked out. When he came to, he was in what looked like a regular room with furniture, but there were also machines he didn't recognize. A man introduced himself as Jonas and said that while on a work-related trip from a dimensional travel agency, he had used the machine to transport the unconscious Richards to this parallel Earth in order to help him. This alternate version of Earth was very similar to ours, but with some key differences. One being that in Jonas's world, the Beatles
were all still alive and making music. Naturally, James didn't believe it until Jonas gave him a cassette tape. The label said Everyday Chemistry was a compilation of Beatles songs that didn't exist here. James brought the tape back with him when he returned to our world, and he posted the whole thing on a website he made. The music's on there. It does kind of sound like the Beatles' version of like Pink Floyd's Division Bell, you know, like just music they would have done in their later years. Is this just a really creative art project or a hoax though? Or is there a chance there's really a whole Beatles album online from a parallel universe? Back in the 12th century, the quiet village of Woolpit in England got a visit from two very strange kids. A brother and sister showed up out of nowhere, looking completely lost. They were also bright green, not a sickly green, I mean, kind of like Shrek hue. The locals were kind of freaked out, but they took them in. The kids didn't speak any recognizable language. They were terrified of sunlight, and they refused to eat anything except raw beans for days. Now, eventually they adjusted a bit. The boy unfortunately got sick and died not long after, but the girl survived and slowly learned to speak English. And that's when she started telling people some pretty strange things. She said they came from a place called St. Martin's Land, where everything had a greenish twilight and the sun never fully shone. According to her, the two of them had been tending to their father's flock when they heard this loud noise and suddenly found themselves in Woolpit. Were these mysterious green children from some different culture and just got lost, or had they somehow wandered out of a parallel world? In 1957, something terrible happened in the quiet town of Hexham, England. Two sisters, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, were hit by a car and killed while walking to church. Their parents, understandably, were devastated, but about a year later, the mother got pregnant again, and in 1958, she gave birth to twins. Again, Jillian and Jennifer, they named them. Now, from the start, there were some odd things. Jennifer had birthmarks in the exact same place as Jacqueline had them. And as they got older, the twins started asking for toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, toys they'd never seen before. They even knew their names. They also seemed to have memories of places they'd never been, like a school the older girls had attended. One time the twins pointed out a park they claimed to recognize, saying, "That's where we used to play." By the time they turned 5, though, the memories began to fade. The girls grew up like normal kids, eventually forgetting all the strange things they used to say, but their father became convinced that Joanna and Jacqueline had been reincarnated into their twin sisters. Was it a case of parental grief mixing with coincidence, or did something actually transfer over? Like two souls refusing to move on, jumping right back into the same family. A lot of people who've heard this story kinda think so. And that's why the story of the Pollock twins became one of the most famous reincarnation cases ever recorded. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson was driving home late at night in Minnesota when his car went into a ditch near the town of Lind. He wasn't hurt, he was just stuck, so he called his parents around 1:30 a.m. and asked them to come get him. He said he was near Lind. When they drove out there, they couldn't find him. He stayed on the phone with them for nearly 47 minutes, calmly describing where he was walking. Then suddenly, in the middle of the call, Brandon said, "Oh, and the line went dead. That was the last time anyone heard from him. His car was eventually found, but they never found a body, and to this day, Brandon Swanson's disappearance remains completely unsolved. In 1901, two English school teachers, Anne Moberly and Charlotte Jourdain, took a trip to Paris. While visiting the Palace of Versailles, they decided to explore the gardens near the Petit Trianon, Marie Antoinette's old stomping grounds. But as they wandered, something felt kinda off. The air got heavy, the atmosphere changed. The people they passed were suddenly wearing 18th century clothing. One man in a wide brim hat looked downright ghostly even. They claimed the place felt lifeless and surreal, like walking into a painting. But then, out of nowhere, everything snapped back to normal. Later, they became convinced that they had time-slipped straight into pre-revolution France, possibly 1792. They even claimed to have seen Marie Antoinette herself sketching by the grass. They wrote a book about it under fake names, and the story became relatively famous. Some believed it, some said they were just delusional or making it up entirely, but both women stuck to their story for the rest of their lives. Were they hallucinating, or did they somehow catch a rip in time and stumble into into the past. There's a patch over the South Atlantic Ocean called the South Atlantic Anomaly, and it's kinda like the Bermuda Triangle but for space. So satellites that pass over it glitch out. Laptops on the International Space Station will sometimes crash. Astronauts report seeing flashes of light even when their eyes are closed. Why? Because in this spot, Earth's magnetic field is weirdly weak, like dangerously weak, which allows more cosmic radiation to pour in. NASA even has to shut off instruments when passing over it because they can't guarantee accurate readings. Some satellites have flat out died after taking too many passes, and here's the freakiest part, the anomaly seems to be growing and splitting. And conspiracy theorists, they got plenty of theories. Ancient alien tech buried under the ocean, a secret underground base, a rift to another dimension, possibly?
Coming in at number 10 is Yosemite National Park. With more than 750 miles of trail, Yosemite National Park is a vast unspoiled wilderness, making it a hiker's dream. But if someone disappears, sending a search team is a nightmare. Now at the moment there are 13 people still missing there, the disappearances ranging from 1972 to 2021. Now one disappearance is the case of Michael Fiercy. He was an outdoorsman, so why did he get lost and never be found? We don't know. In 2005, he decided to hike solo through Yosemite National Park. He had once cracked an ankle at Yellowstone, having to crawl all the way out of the wilderness, so when the outdoorsman failed to return from his adventure after his permit expired and his family expected him home, they feared the worst. Now the search for Fiercy was so massive that the United States Marines were involved. They found one thing belonged to him, his backpack. Now it contained his map, water, and camera. Now his friends and family were even more concerned at this point because they believed that Fiercy would never willingly leave his bag at any time during a hike. Now unfortunately, in the 16 years that have passed, not another trace of Fiercy has been found. With someone so experienced, I find this disappearance to be suspicious. Number 9. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis Martin was on a camping trip at Great Smoky Mountains National Park with his family in the summer of 1969. Dennis and his brothers had planned a prank. They were going to hide separately in the bush and jump out on different sides of the campsite to scare their fathers. They did the prank, but they realized that Dennis was missing. Family, park rangers, and other hikers spread out to search for Dennis almost immediately, but he was nowhere to be found. That evening there was heavy rainfall, which is bad news when you're trying to track someone. The search for Dennis became the largest in National Park Service history. Dennis seemed to have disappeared completely, leaving no trace at all. Now people's disappearances at national parks have prompted people to question how a map of missing persons in the US lines up with America's largest cave systems. Are these people disappearing and being taken to these caves by cave people, animals, or some sort of creature? And are the caves portals to parallel universes? Who knows? Number 8. San Bernardino National Forest. David Gonzalez went camping with his family in San Bernardino National Forest. At one point he asked his mother if he could go get some cookies from the family car, but 40 minutes passed and his mother realized that David never returned and the cookies he wanted to grab were still inside the car. Now he was never found alive again. His death is viewed as one of the strange disappearances in national parks. A week after missing, his badly decomposed body was found only a mile away from where he went missing. Now this area was already combed days prior, so this means that he must have been dropped there by someone or something. An autopsy revealed no trauma and no overt injury. He was just dead without any reason or clue as to why. Now this is already baffling, but what makes the case of David so strange is not his disappearance alone, it's the way the local authorities and investigators seem to handle the case. The officials claim that David was dragged off by a mountain lion, despite no injuries that would suggest that be his fate. Nobody nearby heard David scream either. Now David's parents had gone on record to say that they don't believe David got dragged off by a cougar. They believe that he was kidnapped and that he still may be alive somewhere and that the body wasn't his. Now is this sounding exactly like Stranger Things to anyone else? Maybe he got sucked into the Upside Down with Will and is fighting against a Demogorgon. Number 7. Grand Canyon National Park. At least 56 people have been reported missing missing from Grand Canyon National Park since the beginning of 2018, and at least 6 people have been found dead. Now this is despite the park not only being smaller, but seeing millions fewer visitors than many of the other 424 national park sites. While the park is beautiful, a New York Post investigation recently found it is also the deadliest national park in the country, with the most number of missing persons in the nation. On June 2nd, 2015, Morgenheimer was working for Tour West, a commercial rafting company, and he was a guide for an 8-day rafting trip along the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. While standing near a cliff, Morgan spoke with the lead rafting guide and mentioned something about taking some time off that afternoon. The lead guide was pulled away by a client during this conversation and walked away from the cliff to speak with them. When the guide looked back to the direction that Morgan was standing, he was gone. Now the guide just assumed that Morgan had taken a break and would be back, but Morgan was never seen again. During the afternoon and into the evening, Morgan never showed up for the group's activities. A member of the group then reported Morgan missing that same day. Park rangers and search and rescue teams thoroughly searched the river and surrounding areas. The search lasted for 6 days before it was assumed that Morgan must have drowned. Now his body has never turned up, and there was no trace that he was still alive after June 2nd, 2015. Number 6. Cherikawa National Monument. On January 13th, 1980, Ranger Paul Fugate disappeared from what should have been a routine hike in Arizona's Cherikawa National Monument. Paul, who was last seen heading out to do a trail check around 2 p.m., told a coworker that they could start closing duties without him if he wasn't back by 4:30 p.m. He was then seen starting down the trailhead, and that was the last any person spoke to him or saw him. His girlfriend alerted authorities, who undertook a search for him. They first assumed that he had been the victim of an accident and was injured or stranded in the backcountry. However, as the investigation continued and no traces were found, suspicions began to arise. No trace of Paul has ever been found since that day in 1980. Now to make things even more difficult, Cherikawa has 17 square miles of canyons, treacherous terrain, and wildlands. Now the search and rescue teams found absolutely nothing related to the park ranger. Number 5. Nahanni National Park Reserve. Now this is a strange case. Over the decades, many unfortunate travelers and explorers have gone missing, or they turned up dead and beheaded in the Nahanni Valley. Now the number of decapitated bodies found within the Nahanni Valley have earned it the nickname Valley of Headless Men. In 1917, Martin Jorgensen's body was discovered decapitated next to the remains of his cabin as it was burned to the ground. It is suspected that he struck gold in the vicinity as he wrote of it back home before ending up beheaded. Then in 1931, another body was found. This time it was that of Phil Powers. His charred remains were discovered in ashes of what were his cabin. The RCMP were quick to attribute his death to a faulty stovepipe, but their explanation was repeatedly debunked by various sources. Now many others simply disappeared without a trace in the remote wilderness of the valley. In 1928, one prospector named Angus Hall ventured ahead of his party and was never seen again. Another pair of prospectors, Joe Mulholland and Bill Ipper, disappeared in 1936. Now for many years they were searched for but were never found. The only thing discovered was their cabin, burnt down to the ground. Why are so many people going missing in this specific area, and why are their cabins being burnt down? Number 4. Mount Charleston in Humboldt-Toyabee National Forest. Larry Jeffrey disappeared near the peak of a 12,000-foot Mount Charleston in Humboldt-Toyabee National Forest. Now the search began immediately after the boy wandered away from his brothers, and within days the National Guard and a team of bloodhounds had joined the search. In a TV interview, David Paulies told reporter George Knapp that there were no predators afoot that day, and since the area they were in was pretty secluded, it's easy to rule out abduction by car. This boy just walked into oblivion, David said. Now when Jeffrey disappeared, he was wearing light clothing, and authorities were doubtful that he could survive the cold temperatures at night. The searchers found and lost the trail a few times, and they discovered evidence that the boy had been eating insects and forged berries along the way. Overall, 1,000 people searched for 16 days but never found him. It appears that he just went poof, maybe into an alternate dimension. Perhaps. Number 3. Ozark National Park. In the 1940s, a girl named Catherine Van Alst went missing while camping at Ozark National Park with her family. She was barefoot and wearing only her swimsuit when she disappeared. Now searches were conducted high and low for the missing girl, but it wasn't until 6 days later that she was found. Now the catch, she was still barefoot, still in her swimsuit, and totally unharmed. She was alive. Now she'd also traveled over 30 miles and climbed 600 feet without getting a scratch on her. her. She wasn't even scared. Now, no one, including her, has ever been able to explain it. Could she have gotten trapped in a portal and somehow made her way back to our world? That could be one explanation for sure. Number 2, Santa Fe National Forest. Santa Fe National Forest in New Mexico has bizarre wooden structures all throughout the forest. Now, no one knows who made them or why. The structures range in size but have all been constructed out of fallen trees and limbs, with some reaching over 20 feet tall and dozens of feet in diameter. They don't seem to have a pattern as to their locations, they simply just appear. Now, they do have a few things in common though. They resemble teepees, though no one can actually live inside them, and the Forest Service has no idea who is building them or why, but their response so far has been to dismantle any that are found. The destruction of these mystery structures is to eliminate the forest fire threat that they create. The Santa Fe National Park Service has issued a press release asking for any information about the mystery structures, and according to the release, these structures are prohibited under federal law and violators could face a fine up to $5,000 and possible imprisonment for 6 months. Now, does this have to do with the cult? Can these structures transport you to another dimension? I guess we'll have to see. And coming in at number 1 is Green Mountain National Forest. The Vermont State Police exists because of Paula Jean Weldon. Now, Paula Weldon was a student at Vermont's Bennington College and was familiar with the Green Mountain National Forest to the east of her college town. Now, according to Bennington Banner, Paula set off for the trail on December 1st, 1946, telling her roommate, "I'm off for a long walk," and she was wearing relatively light clothing. Now, she apparently hitchhiked to the trail with local Louis Knapp, who gave a ride to a young woman matching her description. He dropped her off near the trail, and the last known person to see her was a washman named Ernie Whiteman, who warned her about going into the cold landscape. Once it became clear that Paula had gone into the forest but hadn't left, a search was organized, but it was to no avail. Now, Paula was actually one of 6 people who were reported missing near Bennington from 1945 to 1950. Now, their still unsolved disappearances helped to earn the nickname of Bennington Triangle for the area. Coming in at number 10 is the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle covers about 500,000 square miles of ocean off the southeastern tip of Florida. It's a section of the Atlantic Ocean roughly bounded by Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, where dozens of ships and airplanes have disappeared. Unexplained circumstances surround this area, as it's known that compasses have malfunctioned here back when Christopher Columbus was sailing the world. Now, some speculate that unknown and mysterious forces account for the unexplained disappearances, such as extraterrestrials capturing humans for study, the influence of the lost continent of Atlantis, and vortexes that suck objects into other dimensions. There have been so many planes and ships that have gone missing over the area, with people on them suddenly just going poof. Now, where did all those people go? I think to another dimension. Number 9, the Gates of Guinea. According to voodoo mythology, the newly dead are sent to a kind of purgatory before traveling to meet their ancestors in the deep waters. Known as Guinea, this realm is presided over by the notorious Loa, who goes by the name of Baron Samedi. There are tales of voodoo practitioners opening the gates of Guinea to reclaim the souls of the dead. Now, souls in this lost land are considered to be at high risk from hoodoo magicians, who have the power to reanimate them as zombies. Yeah. Zombies. While some followers of voodoo interpret the 7 gates as a spiritual metaphor, others believe them to exist in the physical realm. Now, one of these stories locates the gates in New Orleans. To enter Guinea, it is said that one must open the 7 gates in the correct order. Each successive gate is presided over by one of the Loa of Death, who must be appeased with the appropriate offerings. Now, although the exact location of the gates have never been disclosed, there have been suggestions over the years that the clue may lie in the Vive, or summoning signal of Baron Samedi himself. Appearing as a crucifix surmounted by 7 stars, the symbol might be a map of some kind and once aligned over the crossroads of Canal Street and Bazin Street in the city's French Quarter, as the stars of the Veve seem to fall on notable surrounding cemeteries. Number 8, the Alaska Triangle. This remote area is infamous for alien abductions, Bigfoot sightings, and paranormal phenomena and vanishing airplanes. Like much of Alaska, the triangle contains some of the most rugged, unforgiving wilderness in North America. It's an impossible vast expanse of dense forests, craggy mountain peaks, alpine lakes, and large swaths of plain old wilderness. Now, with all this, it's no shock that people go missing. What is surprising, however, is the sheer number of people who go missing. Add to the fact that many disappear disappear without a shred of evidence, and bodies, alive or dead, are rarely found. More than 16,000 people, including airplane passengers, hikers, locals, and tourists, have disappeared within the Alaska Triangle since 1988. The rate per 1,000 people is more than twice the national missing person average, and the rate of people who are never found is even higher. Now, the numbers don't lie, and they imply that something else is going on here than people merely getting lost in the mountains. Is it a portal taking people to another world? I think so. Number 7. Hoska Castle. The Hoska Castle is located in the forest north of Prague and is one of the most haunted places in the world. According to the legend, on this exact spot, there was a huge hole in the ground that was considered to be the gateway to hell. Paranormal activities were disturbing the region, and the Bohemians thought they would solve their problems if they covered the hole, so that's why they built the castle. Now, no one actually wanted to build this castle and get close to the portal, so they used prisoners to help. Hundreds of prisoners were forced to go into the pit to build the foundation for the castle. However, when they were taken out of the hole, they all looked like old men. The first prisoner lasted only a few seconds before he began screaming. When he was pulled back up, the story goes, his hair had turned white, and it seemed like he'd aged 30 years, and he babbled incoherently about half-human creatures who flapped through the darkness of grotesque wings. Now, today, witnesses report several different forms of paranormal activities, and some even claim that the site contains remains of demonic beasts who escaped from the pit. Number 6. Gate of the Sun. Believed by some to be a portal to the land of the gods, the Gate of the Sun in Bolivia shares much of its legends with other similar sites. Tiwanaku is a city said to be one of the most important sites of ancient America, with legends stating that the sun god Viracocha appeared in Tiwanaku and made it the place of creation, the place he chose to start the human race. Carved from one block of stone and thought to be 14,000 years old, the gateway displays what appears to be human beings with rectangular helmets. Now, this has led many researchers to state the purpose of the gate is indeed connected to something astronomical. The top middle of the arch features a carving of the supposed sun god and shows what looks to be rays of light appearing behind and forcing their way all around all sides of the deity's head. Although it now stands upright, when it was found by European explorers in the mid-1800s, it was said to have been lying horizontally. It also appears to have a large crack on the top right of the arch, and it is unknown how this happened. Number 5. Sedona Vortexes. Sedona, a small town in Arizona, was once known by the Native American tribes as Nawanda, and at one time the most sacred city to them. It is said that the red rocks of the desert that surround the small town can create vortexes with the capability of transporting people to another realm or dimension. Native Americans believe that these rocks were spiritually charged, while sounds emanating from them have been reported. In the 1950s, a local tribesman was aiding treasure hunters who were searching for gold in the mountains. He told them a story of his people, dating it back to the 1800s, of 3 tribesmen who had discovered the archway while riding in the desert. The story goes that when one of them walked through, he simply disappeared. The helpful tribesman stated he had also seen a strange incident at the alleged doorway. While out in the desert, a sudden rainstorm hit the area and turned the skies gray with clouds. Now, as he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of the archway and saw that the skies through the arch were clear blue. He walked closer to it, seeing that the archway's image of the mountain range was the same and the only difference was the sky. However, he too became scared, mounted his horse, and returned home. Number 4. The Bennington Triangle. Located in the southwestern part of Vermont, this landlocked triangular area is notorious for a string of unexplained disappearances that occurred there. Between 1945 and 1950, 5 people disappeared in the Bennington Triangle. Now, the shocking thing is 4 out of the 5 missing people were never found. The only person found was Frida Langer. On October 28, 1950, Frida and her cousin Herbert Elsner left their family campsite near the Somerset Reserve to go on a hike. During the journey, she slipped and fell into a stream, and she told Herbert if he would wait, she would go back to the campsite, change clothes, and catch up to him. Now, when she did not return, Herbert made his way back to the campsite and discovered that Frida had not returned and that nobody had seen her since they left. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 searches were conducted involving aircraft, helicopters, and up to 300 100 searchers. No trace of Frida was found during the search, and then on May 12, 1951, Frida's body was found 3.5 miles from the campsite in the eastern branch of the Deerfield River, an area that had been searched 7 months previously. No cause of death could be determined because of the condition of her remains, and it appears that the Bennington Triangle will always remain a mystery. Number 3. The Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel is a 140-room colonial revival hotel about 5 miles from the entrance to Rocky Mountain National Park. Now, the Stanley Hotel inspired the Overlook Hotel in Stephen King's 1977 best-selling novel, The Shining. Now, the owner died in 1940, but many believe his presence can still be seen and felt at the hotel, mainly at the bar and in the billiard room. The ghost of his wife Flora has a habit for tinkering around on the hotel's piano, according to multiple accounts. Now, the 4th floor is the most haunted, with guests hearing children's laughter in the hall with no one to be found. Down the hall in room 407, multiple guests have reported being tucked into bed by some invisible force, and others have felt someone sit on the foot of the bed only to find nothing there. In room 428, some have had the vision of a cowboy looming over the bed as they slept or standing in the corner. Now, how do all these ghosts get in there? Well, it's the portal in the hotel. When you enter the hotel, there is a staircase landing filled with paintings and mirrors facing each other. Now, if you don't know, it's said if you put 2 mirrors in front of each other, they create a portal to another world. Why would anyone place 2 mirrors in front of each other? For the portal, of course, and that's exactly what they did at the Stanley Hotel. Number 2. The Devil's Sea. In the Pacific Ocean south of Tokyo, Japan, lies a treacherous stretch of water that has been nicknamed the Devil's Sea. Due to a string of vessels and fishing boats that have disappeared, many compare it to the Bermuda Triangle. Now, the most famous of these disappearances happened in 1953 when a research fishery ship called the Kyotomoro No. 5, which consisted of 31 crew members and scientists combined, sailed into the area to investigate a recently formed volcanic island. Unfortunately, the vessel never returned from its voyage, with no traces left of it, or the crew for that matter. With so many people missing there too, there has to be something else going on that they are experiencing that we don't know. And coming in at number 1 is the Nevada Triangle. Consisting of vast stretches of the desert and the Sierra Nevada mountains, this triangular area in the Silver State has made headlines in recent years due to a disappearance that occurred in 2007. The victim was an aviator adventurer named Steve Fawcett, who flew into the Nevada Triangle in a small plane and was never seen again, despite the massive search for him. But he's not the only one, as many others have disappeared before him. Some 2,000 planes have been lost in the last 60 years. In this remotely populated area of more than 25,000 miles of mountain desert, many crashes are never found. Then, of course, Area 51 is there. With the area's close proximity to Area 51, it has led some theorists to speculate the presence of UFOs in the Nevada Triangle have been responsible for some of these disappearances. Coming in at number 10 is the Cosmic Ray. In 2020, it was announced that a group of NASA scientists working on an experiment in Antarctica had detected evidence of a parallel universe where the rules of physics are the opposite of our own, according to a report. A cosmic ray detection experiment has found particles that could be from a parallel realm that was also born in the Big Bang. The experts used a giant balloon to carry NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, or Anita, high above Antarctica, where the frigid dry air provided the perfect environment with little to no radio noise to distort its findings. A constant wind of high energy particles constantly arrives on Earth from outer space. Low energy subatomic neutrinos with a mass close to 0 can pass completely through Earth, but higher energy objects are stopped by the solid matter of our planet. This means the high energy particles can only be detected coming down from space, but the team's Anita detected heavier particles which come up out of the Earth. Now, the finding implies that these particles are actually traveling backwards in time, suggesting evidence of a parallel universe. Now, is there an actual portal here where you can just jump through? No, not really, but it's still pretty cool. Number 9. The Hadron Collider. The Large Hadron Collider, LHC, is the world's largest and highest energy particle collider. It was built by the European Organization for Nuclear Research, CERN, between 1998 and 2008, in collaboration with over 10,000 scientists and hundreds of universities and laboratories across more than 100 countries. Between 2013 and 2015, the LHC was shut down in upgraded, and at the end of 2018 it was shut down for maintenance and further upgrades, reopening over 3 years later in April 2022. Now that it's up and running, it's breaking records for the highest energy particle collisions ever performed. The teams involved are searching for more information on the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson, and signs of dark matter. And this machine could test for other dimensions. Now, how could they test for extra dimensions? Well, one option would be to find evidence of particles that can exist only if extra dimensions are real. Theories that suggest extra dimensions predict that, in the same way atoms have low energy ground state and excited high energy states, there would be heavier versions of standard particles in other dimensions. Now, these heavier versions of particles, called Kaluza-Klein states, would have exactly the same properties as standard particles and so be visible to our detectors, but with a greater mass. Now, such heavy particles can only be revealed at the high energies reached by the LHC, so we could potentially find out if there are indeed other dimensions. Number 8. The Huska Castle. The Huska Castle is located in the forests of North Prague and is one of the most haunted places in the world. According to legend, on this exact spot there was a huge hole in the ground that was considered to be the gateway to hell. Paranormal activities were disturbing the region, and the Bohemians thought they could solve the problems if they covered the hole, and that's why they built the castle. This gateway to hell was allegedly so deep that no one could see the bottom of it. Animal-human hybrids were reported to have crawled out of it, and dark-winged otherworldly creatures flew in its vicinity. Legend has it that when construction began in the castle, all of the prisoners that were sentenced to death were often pardoned if they consented to be lowered by rope into the hole and report back on what they saw. When the first person was lowered, he began screaming after a few seconds, and when pulled back to the surface, he looked as if he had aged 30 years. He had grown wrinkles and his hair had turned white, and he babbled incoherently about half-human creatures who flap through the darkness with grotesque wings. Today, witnesses report several different forms of paranormal activities, and some even claim that the site contains remains of demonic beasts who escaped the pit. It seems like they may not have closed the portal all the way, but this is one place I would not want to visit. Number 7. Mount Shasta. There's a well-known legend that says that somewhere deep beneath Northern California's 14,179 foot tall Mount Shasta is a complex of tunnels and a hidden city called Telos, the ancient city of light for the Lemurians. They were the residents of the mythical lost continent of Lemura, which met its demise under the waves of the Pacific thousands of years ago. Lemurians believed to have survived the catastrophe and are said to have settled in Telos, and over the years their offspring have been sporadically reported wandering around the area, 7 feet tall with long flowy hair, often clad in sandals and white robes. Lemurians aren't the only unusual figures said to inhabit this place though. Mount Shasta is believed to be a home base for the lizard people too, reptilian humanoids that also reside underground. The mountain is a hotspot of UFO sightings, and one of the most recent of which occurred in February 2020. So with all of that, how are they coming into Earth? A portal, of course. Number 6. Skinwalker Ranch. You may have seen a TV ad for the show The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, and let me tell you, this place has an extreme presence of paranormal activity. The inhabitants of Skinwalker Ranch may have reported slightly different stories over the years, but they have a few things in common. Since the 1950s, there have been hundreds of reports of UFOs and unexplained phenomena in the Uinta Basin, and not just at Skinwalker. Neighbors of the ranch report seeing various types of bright lights in the sky, often appearing as a shape that looks like a doorway or portal. Others report giant flying objects, cattle mutilations are common too, and some neighbors have reported seeing cows that appear to have been struck by lightning with no sign of scorched earth to be found. One group shared a story of trying to spot a UFO one night, only to return to find that their car had been moved without a trace of tire tracks in the desert sand. And obviously there have been sightings of skinwalkers there. Now, where are all these creatures coming from? A secret portal? I think so. Number 5. Hoia Baciu Forest. This forest is located in Romania and it just looks creepy. It's filled with crooked trees contorted into strange shapes. Now it's known as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania, and I feel like that tells you a lot. The ancient Hoia Baciu Forest is named after a shepherd who disappeared into the woods along with his 200 sheep over a century ago. They were never seen again. But there are more recent disappearances as well, and there has been no evidence to where these people went, just that they went poof. Now, there have also been many reports of UFO sightings, ghost encounters, and unexplainable illnesses. There are many legends and stories about this forest, but perhaps the creepiest being about a young girl who disappeared, only to emerge 5 years later with no recollection of what happened. How something like that could happen, I have no idea, but that truly scares me. You will never find me strolling around this forest ever. Number 4. Black holes. In the vast expanse of space, black holes are objects with an incredibly strong gravitational pull that not even light can escape from. They are formed when massive stars collapse under their own gravity. Black holes, despite their mysterious nature, play a crucial role in shaping the cosmos. Their immense gravitational influence affects the fabric of space-time itself, warping it in ways that scientists are still trying to comprehend. As black holes possess immense gravitational pull, they provide the necessary conditions for the existence of wormholes, shortcuts through space-time that could connect two distant points or even two separate universes. While traversing these wormholes remains purely theoretical and highly speculative, the possibility of black holes acting as doorways to other universes unveils an extraordinary realm of possibilities. Now, does anyone want to volunteer with me and see if this does work? I want to know. Number 3. Dreams. What happens when we dream? Where do we go? Some believe it's a spiritual realm where we can jump to unknown universes and timelines. It's been a big discussion on TikTok right now where women are talking about how in dreams they've had a baby and family, and when they wake up it's all gone but it felt so real and they long for their family back. Well, their dream family back. I think this was them in a different dimension and them being ripped back into ours. Have you ever heard of lucid dreaming? Well, it's said that lucid dreaming lets you access different planes of existence and that you can go to different dimensions. But be careful because not all the dimensions are safe. Now, unfortunately, I do not know how to lucid dream, but I've heard it's pretty cool as long as you do it responsibly. Number 2. Pelham Township. In York County, Pennsylvania, there is an urban legend that entails the 7 gates of hell. These are physical gates that appear to the human eye as you pass through and discover each one. Legend has it anyone who reached the 5th gate was never seen again. It's said to be in the wooded area off Trout Run in the northwestern part of Pelham. There are many different rumors of the 7 gates of hell, including one about an asylum where people were trapped and died. The mental asylum was isolated from the rest of the public because it housed such insane patients. Then one day back in the 1800s, a fire started and consumed many of the patients. Some patients escaped but were beaten to death when found. Legend has it the gates were put up by a local search party to trap any remaining patients of the mental asylum. Now, it's said that the first gate, which is the only gate out of all 7 that could be seen during the daytime, is located in a wooded area along Trout Run Road. Now, the other 6 are said to only be visible at night. Now, is this real? I don't know, but if you find out, please let me know. And coming in at number 1 is mirrors. Mirrors are thought to be portals to another world. Some believe this is another dimension, but those who believe in ghosts believe it is a portal to the other side. That's why in ghost hunting shows, you see the investigators freak out when there are 2 mirrors facing each other because it's an easy access way for spirits to enter the physical world. Now, many cultures still hold on to their superstitions that exist concerning mirrors, ghosts, souls, and death. The act of covering your mirror overnight is something that is done in multiple cultures and across many beliefs worldwide. Personally, I believe in this. I refuse to sleep in front of a mirror. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. And who could forget the movie Us? It's a big nope from me, and the fact that anyone can make a mirror portal, I don't like the sound of that.